RH, quer saber como voar no trabalho? É só usar a Flash. Com a Flash, você concentra toda a gestão de pessoas em um único lugar. Faça a admissão dos colaboradores e solicite mais de 8 categorias de benefícios. Ah, e você ainda pode fazer todo o controle de ponto. Conheça o novo onboarding integrado da Flash em flashapp.com.br.
Welcome, everyone, to the G-Note Podcast. I am your host, as always, Jason Spicy G. Goldman, and I'm a Grammy-winning record producer, arranger, and musician. I've been a music professor at USC for over 22 years, and I am most known for writing and producing music for the iconic crooner Michael Bublé over the past 20 years. This is a podcast for musicians who want advice and strategies on navigating the music industry. If you're not a musician but a music fan, I promise there is plenty in here for you as well. On this pod, we talk all things music. On today's pod, I am discussing this idea of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Let's get into it. All right, folks, what's happening? Thanks always for lending me your ears. Today's episode is for those wanting to produce an album, or really for any producers in general who want to produce music. And I want to tell you a personal story about a session I did with Michael Bublé where I learned that I should not be doing everything myself. First, we have to grasp the concept of, once an album is released into the world, that's it. It's out there, and like anything, the first impression of what people see or hear is really, really important. And once you understand that really deeply, you can make sure that you do whatever it takes to make sure you feel the album really represents you, or in this case, the artist, in the best possible light. And something I've had to come to grips with is that I can't do it all. I consider myself very competent in a lot of areas of music. And sometimes it just becomes impossible to do it all, even though I really want to. You work with a lot of different people, and you see mistakes other people make, and you don't want to make those same mistakes, so you just feel like, well, I'll just do it myself, right? It's a lot of times it's what you see when you hear people called micromanagers, right? Everything has to be managed by them. Now, I don't think that I've gone that far or in this particular story, but it's certainly something that I had to realize that I just can't do everything myself. So I did a session back in 2022 with Michael for his album Higher. So it really wasn't that long ago. And I arranged 4 songs for big band and orchestra, which, as you can imagine, is already a ton of work. And the great thing about these songs for me personally is that I was the producer on all 4 songs. Now, keep in mind, as I've mentioned before, being the producer makes me, in this instance, responsible for the final outcome of the recording. So anyone who's producing an album, you are responsible for the final outcome of the recording. If it's successful, it's due to your work. If it's a failure, it's due to the lack of work that you did and not getting it right on the record. So it's really important that you understand where the role of producer is. So as I said, I'm responsible for the outcome of these recordings. And in this case, the artist and the record company are counting on me to make this happen. So after arranging the songs, I also organized the band. I printed out the parts. I taped them all. I booked the recording studios. I did all the scheduling with Michael and his management, and many, many additional tasks that come with being a producer and a writer and anything else you want to call me on this particular project. So the day came to record the music, and we spent the morning laying down the big band material. So this is typically how a session works, is in the morning we'll record the big band stuff, the 17 musicians, like all the brass and woodwinds, and then in the afternoon we will go ahead and do the string section because that'll sit on top. So in the morning we did the 17 musicians, the big band portion, and then in the afternoon we did the strings, which is roughly about 20 strings. So here's where the issue comes into play. I wanted to conduct the music as I had done on all of Michael's past recordings. I mean, at this point, it's over a dozen songs that I've, arranged for Michael. So we did the day's worth of recording, and I was happy with how everything came out. However, after sitting with the music for probably about a week, maybe even a little bit more, Mike and I were listening and realizing the intro on one of the songs just didn't sound great. And it was a combination of it needing, really in the end, a different intro. But also some of the players were missing parts, were having some difficulty on the parts. When I left the session, I thought everything was great. But the issue was I was not in the booth with Mike to listen to all of the takes. I was out in the room with the musicians conducting. So the reason this is an issue is because I didn't hear the mistakes because I was concentrating on the conducting of the band. And, after a few days passed, Mike and I were talking, and he says to me, "Man, I don't think this intro is going to work. It doesn't sound clean." Again, meaning there were too many errors in the musician's part. Plus, he just felt, as I did too, that we needed a different intro. Now, usually this isn't a problem in a session because I can always, go back to some of the other takes and choose a better take, of the musicians, maybe not having as difficult a time on a specific part. However, because the intro was so challenging, I never realized we didn't get a clean take, even though we did 3 to 4 takes. For those of you keeping score, I had mentioned on a previous pod, you should always get a minimum of 3 to 4 takes of a song, right? Just in case these things happen. Keep in mind, a session like this is roughly 30 to 40K, maybe even as high as 50K for the day. $50,000 we're talking about. Perhaps you see the issue now. In order to get a better take, we would need to go back into the studio and redo the intro, costing us roughly another, 15 to 20,000 to do just the one song, because it would be a special session just for one song, and there's a minimum that you have to meet. So Mike says to me, he says, "Look, man, I know you can do all of these things. I know you want to conduct the band, and you've done this. I've seen you do this for years and years. But now that you are the sole producer, I need you in the booth with me so we can make sure we have what we need. We can discuss, if we think things are working, we can fix things on the fly before the session is over." And you know what the thing is? He is, and he was, 100% right. I should have been in the booth with him. I got so caught up in wanting a hand in everything that I forgot that my role had shifted into being the sole producer for one of the biggest artists in the world. I was used to fighting for every ounce of credit. Trust me, folks, if you're an up-and-coming musician, and you've been in this business for a little bit, you understand what I'm talking about. We are used to fighting for everything. Every ounce of credit, every penny, every percentage of a song, we're just used to fighting for everything. So I got so caught up that I forgot the most basic thing, which is make sure it's the best it can be. Now, lucky for me, there was another song that he wanted to go back into the studio and do for other reasons. So it wasn't just me making a $15,000 mistake, but I can tell you that was a very eye-opening experience for me. To put it in perspective though, folks, I mean, a $15,000 session for someone like Bublé is honestly not that much money. Considering most of his albums are roughly in the $1 million range to make. So this was literally a blip. But I don't like blips, and I don't do blips. And I've gotten so used to not really making errors, that when one happens, it's almost like a pretty traumatic experience for me because I'm like, how could this happen? I would never have let something like that happen. But I did. And it wasn't because I couldn't do everything. It was because I shouldn't have done everything because I should have been in a different spot in the control room with Michael, listening and solving problems there rather than being in the tracking room and conducting the band and focusing on dynamics and rehearsing the band. That's not what the producer needs to be doing. So the moral of the story here is, folks, just because you want to do it all and possibly can doesn't mean you should. It's also a huge lesson to everyone who is an aspiring producer. Make sure you are with the artist during a recording session. You need to not be playing an instrument or conducting or engineering. You need to be focused on just listening and collaborating with the artist and making sure everything is the best that it can be. Being a producer, as I've mentioned before, carries a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility, especially when you are working for major artists and major record labels. You are typically in control of the budget for those songs you're working on, and you don't want to let anyone down by either going over budget or, even worse, not having the best possible product. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. These things are always fun for me to make. They're a little embarrassing sometimes because, again, I'm showing you some of my mistakes that I made, but hopefully you take from my mistakes and you'll learn from them and you won't make the same. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, I really hope you do. You can stay up to date with the new shows that I have coming up, giveaways, and more importantly, as I always say, the concerts, everybody. I'm playing at the Vibrato with my big band. We play every 2 to 3 months. We have our holiday show coming up in December. You should definitely come because it's awesome. It really is. And it always is sold out. It's 2 shows. So please check out their website, Vibrato Jazz. You can also follow me on Instagram at SpicyGMusic or check out my website, jasongoldmanmusic.com, to see what projects I'm currently working on and to see when I'll be performing next. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Much love. Peace.
The Kimi Kato Show, featured on Pantheon Podcasts.
The Kimi Kato Show is a weekly exploration of Japanese pop culture in all its facets. Kimi and Jeremiah, as hosts, delve into various aspects of Japanese culture, including music, food, fashion, and film, offering listeners a comprehensive and entertaining look at what makes Japanese pop culture unique and intriguing. It is your invitation to Japan.
Hey everybody, I'm Dan.
I'm Doug. We're in the band Hoobastank.
Hi, I'm Takato Miyake, working for Suntory Global Spirits.
Hello, I'm Sincere from Ryusenkei.
Hello guys, this is Masata Kumi.
This is Chris Hart.
Hi, I am Sugizo. You are listening to Kimi Kato Show. Thank you.
Kimi Kato Show is brought to you by Evolve Entertainment Network, Pantheon Podcasts, and Radio Candy Media.